here, coming, and I'm quoting now out of the Sunday Times, just some of the experiences that these women that have been robbed before or kidnapped too, what they have said. They've talked about how, they too were approached by this gentleman. In the one incident, the victim was an engineer. They stole her money and she managed to escape just within an inch of her life. Another woman, her father tells the story of how, he approached his daughter, wanted to take her out for movies. When they were in the car, he held her at knife point, right, threatening her life. And again, she managed to get away, but it was also within an inch of her life. You think about the 28 IDs that this man was found with, 28 cards and 20 ID cards that he was found with. Those are, again, stories of women. And it takes me back to the dating scam. You know, the dating scam, and we covered a bit of that on the show last year, where you had women coming forward and sharing their experiences of being robbed of their pensions by people that claimed to love them. And in some instances, these men will date women, mostly middle-aged. They'll date them for a year. They'll date them for 8 months. They'll promise to marry them. They'll move in. They'll commit. They will do everything they need to do to make you feel comfortable enough to tick the box. And then before you know it, when you are comfortable, then they make the kind of moves that are going to leave you penniless. And how we learn and sometimes grow as a society is through us being able to share these stories. But because of the culture of victim blaming, it prohibits us from being vulnerable publicly. Because when people speak up, the inclination now is to say, well, what did you do to deserve that happening to you? We don't give we don't give the victims the benefit of the doubt. We give the perpetrators the benefit of the doubt because, we expect that, no, you are violent. You must expect that you're going to be murdered. You must expect that you're going to be robbed. You must expect that your pensions are going to be taken away from you by somebody that you have grown to love and trust. And the culture of victim blaming is actually robbing us of the opportunity to be able to create some level of protection for ourselves as a society. Because when victims speak up and they are supported and they are believed in what they say, it offers protection potentially for somebody else falling prey to the same suspects, to the same perpetrators, who often use the same modus operandi. How many people had to lose their pensions to scamsters before it was something that we could talk about publicly? And even then, those that have gone through those experiences are still shamed. So we need to review this culture of blaming victims and trying to understand, well, what did you do wrong? There must be something you did that almost justifies or explains why what happened to you happened. And because if the criminal justice system is not working, we have to start seeing what are the alternatives, how else. And for me, it comes back to being able to share our stories. But if people can't share their stories, then we don't know. Then only after a horrendous murder like Oleratos has happened do you have strings of women that are able to come up and say, but that happened to me too. It's part of the conversation that I would like us to have this morning. Coming up in the second hour of the show, we'll be looking at politics and nepotism It's in light of what happened with those appointments for the CETA boards and the subsequent withdrawal of that due to some of those figures being closely linked to politicians. And then in the final hour, we're going to look at the ban that the Eastern Cape Education Department has placed on all liquor sales on public school grounds. We'll try to find out what is behind it. Of course, some of your former Model C schools are raising concerns as they believe it's going to impact their fundraising initiatives. So we'll unpack that in the final hour of the show. It is the open line. It's your national roundtable. Happy to have any conversation you want to put on the national agenda this morning. The number to dial 086 000 2032. That's 086 000 2032. On the WhatsApp voice note line 0614 104 107.
Do you want to study towards a tertiary qualification but need a flexible study schedule? Stadio Higher Education's distance learning qualifications offer just that. Our distance learning support is designed for your success. 2025 applications to Stadio's range of high-quality, affordable qualifications are now open. Distance learning qualifications are available in law, administration and management, commerce, teacher education, policing, law enforcement, humanities, and information technology. Visit stadio.ac.za and register today. Stadio, a new vision in higher education.
Dive into the future with SAIMI, the South African International Maritime Institute. SAIMI supports to unlock maritime opportunities through education, research, skills development, and maritime advocacy. Join us in contributing to a sustainable ocean economy for South Africa and beyond. Explore a sea of opportunities and be part of the maritime transformation. Visit saimi.co.za today. SAIMI is funded by the National Skills Fund on behalf of Department of Higher Education and Training.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
You're listening to The Talking Point. We continue the conversation. It's your national roundtable. You can dial in on 086 000 2032. On the WhatsApp voice note line 0614 104 107. Madimeja, you're calling from Mokopane. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Kate. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I understand you're a former cop.
Yes, I'm a former police officer.
Okay.
I'm a former police officer. Yes, you're right.
All right. What do you want to add? What do you want to contribute this morning?
Yeah, Katie, as you have been talking about the problems of crime in South Africa, the problems that we're having, because usually when a new national commissioner is appointed, there's that enthusiasm that no, this guy will probably stop crime, will come with a strategy to stop crime and to reduce the level of crime and so forth in South Africa. But there is one most important point that a lot of people are missing, including experts from a business against crime and so forth. The most important thing is that we, at the college, I worked at the police station, and at later stage, in the police. I stayed in the police for 16 years. I then moved to the college. So there's one most important thing that a lot of people are overlooking. That is the recruitment process and the kind of people that we are recruiting in the police. We are recruiting thugs. A lot of people that we are recruiting at police colleges, I stayed in the college for 14 years, are the kind of people that are not even fit to be in the police. So it doesn't matter what kind of strategy you come up with as a general. As long as the kind of people that you are having, if you are a coach, you can become a very good coach. But if you are having players who are not fit to play football, people mentally and physically fit, then there is no way you can come up with all sorts of strategies to fight crime, but those kind of strategies to fight crime won't work. I just want to give an example of the kind of police officers that we trained. One student who was writing an exam was caught cheating by an instructor. I still remember the name of the instructor who's currently working at the Hawks. He was caught cheating, and then the instructor tried to remove, he grabbed the paper that he was using to grip. And that student from KZN, I still remember the province that he came from, he fought physically, he assaulted the instructor in the exam room in front of all other students, and he took back that paper that he was using to grip, and he chewed it and swallowed it. And at the hearing, that student was given a suspended sentence. And as we speak today, that kind of a student is working in KZN as a police officer. So a lot of things are happening at recruitment. Yes.
That can't be true. He wasn't immediately kicked out?
No. I remember the chairperson for the hearing was Kenneth Mukometsu. I remember that vividly. And the instructor who was assaulted is currently in the Hawks, working in Silverton, is Mr. Kenil Kucho. That is the honest truth. He was given a suspended sentence. The person who represented the student in the hearing is Mr. Michael Mabitsel. I remember from Pop Crew. I remember the whole story vividly. You remember? Yes.
So Madimeja, is the problem with the criteria that is used to recruit these officials? Because that's another thing that we have heard. With the high rate of unemployment these days, the police is often also identified as one of the sectors that is more easily accessible to people. So when those openings go out, a lot of people apply, but not because they want to be policemen, but because they want to get a job and they feel the criteria is something that will be easy for them to meet.
Yes, Cathy, let me tell you one thing. In 2007, I was in class with students. And then there is this gentleman who's currently a sergeant, but he was a witness in one of the high-profile cases in South Africa. He was a witness. He came from Guyana. He stood up in 2007 in my class. And he said, because I was worried about the quality of the student that was heavy, because some of them were struggling even to write very simple sentences. And I asked, but guys, how did you pass all these examinations that are required for you to be the aptitude tests and everything, and physical tests and psychometric tests and everything? And that student stood up in my class and he said, no, remember, I was a sergeant at the time. He said, Sergeant, myself, I paid 5,000 to be in this college. And student, I think I had about 33 students, and they all rose up in class and they said, why, hey, how can you say such a thing? You understand? They tried they say, don't talk about those kind of things. And he insisted, that student. He said, no, but that is the fact. I know, I spoke with some of the students from Soweto. They also paid, students from Limpopo, they also paid a certain amount of money, and KZN and so forth, because Pretoria West College was the only college training student in South Africa at the time. You understand?
Sure.
Now I started following all these investigations, but immediately after I heard that, I contacted Hangwani Mohlahlana. If you still remember, he was working with Jackie Slaby. I contacted Hangwani Mohlahlana, who was dismissed, I think, for dubious things. You remember Hangwani Mohlahlana. And I called him. I said, Hangwani, I'm in class. And then I'm not in good terms with the generals in training. I was not. Pahlane was at that time he was a divisional commissioner for training. And I said, because I talk too much, I'm not in good terms with Pahlane, because I told Pahlane his mistakes several times. I'm not in good terms with. There was one general from Bushbuckridge, and I said, I'm phoning you because I'm really worried. I'm hearing these things in the college every now and then. Please, Hangwani, can you do something, please? Because the kind of students that we are training, these are thugs. These are people who will go out and rape you outside. These are people who will kill you outside. I'm not saying all of them, no, but some, because they display those kind of attitudes within a training environment. So then what is going to happen outside when they're not policed? Because in the college, there's strict discipline, they have to be watched, they have to run, they have to do this. But they did all sorts of nasty things. And you know what I told Hangwane Mulaudzi? After Hangwane, I told in 2010, I contacted Nokululeko Mbata, who's today still in the police. Remember, she left the police when General Kale was removed by Jacob Zuma. I spoke with Nokululeko Mbata. She was using an 003 number. And I spoke with her.
Mighty Major, I'm going to need you to wrap it up now.
Yes. So the most important thing, Kate, all I'm saying is that there are more than 100 factors that impede crime fighting in South Africa. And I told Yusuf Ibrahimji about them. I said, if all these factors, I can't mention them all because it will take me 3 weeks or 4 weeks to discuss all of them. There are too many. But I told Yusuf Ibrahimji, I discussed these issues with Pierre, and then I said, if all these factors are not dealt with, then crime will forever continue to swim in the, yes.
All right, Mighty Major. I think you've made a very, very strong point this morning that part of the problem that we're facing begins with the root, which is the recruitment, the training of these individuals. As somebody who's been training police officers, isn't that scary to hear? He says we're training thugs. We'll continue with the National Roundtable shortly. It's time for your latest headlines.
If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
For the headlines at 9:30, I am Dinomo Daung. Good morning. The Basic Education Employment Initiative, in which about 200,000 people will start working at 200 schools countrywide, demonstrates government's capacity to address youth unemployment. This is according to President Cyril Ramaphosa in his letter to the nation. In other news, the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial is expected to resume this morning in the High Court in Pretoria after the state requested for more time to furnish the defense with vehicle tracking data. And Environment Minister Dion George says that his department has introduced new technology, including drones, to protect rhino in the country. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love from your favorite presenters, along with regular updates from SABC News. And don't forget, you can send your questions to feedback@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation. Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
All right, we continue the conversation on the talking point. Let me go then to David. David, you're in Uppington. Good morning.
Morning, Miss Cathy. How are you?
Good, David.
I'm good. It's so painful, that we have a situation in a democratic South Africa that actually sort of perpetuates a gender disparity that actually sort of look down on our female counterparts as men. I'm raising this because I'm reading a book, The Odyssey of Liberation, by Moses Kagane, the SC. It's so painful that African people have betrayed themselves and became a symbol of the Western way of doing things, whereby we murder women, we rape women, we actually look down on women, of which that is not the African culture that I read of. Because I think African men, they respect women because they value much what they see or what they get out of women. So this Cathy, the previous caller spoke about a number of issues I don't want to put that blame on government solely. Because for me, society has actually failed government. Because we ought to actually contribute when we see things being done in a different way that is unhuman or unsocietal. Then we need to step in and say, no, they are against these things. But again, what, because we tend to be passive. We tend to be passive passengers in this whole journey that is called life. We want to put blame on Cathy as a presenter of SAFM, but we don't want to contribute to enrich the program that is there. So, Mrs. Cathy, what I'm trying to say is that it's so painful that you can find guys dating an honest date like Ulirato, want to have an honest date with a person, and that person tend to be actually a criminal that disguises himself. So I'm in pain because I've got daughters, and my daughter is studying in Bloemfontein. And now I'm asking myself, is she safe? I called her this morning, myself and my wife. Called her this morning to ask, are you guys all right? Are you safe? Yeah, but I said to her, Baba, don't even go with a person that calls you on the cell phone.
Yeah.
The first thing that you need to ask you is that, where did you get my number? I don't know you.
Okay. David?
So those things, they make you very worried as a person. I'm a very down-to-earth person, but at the same time, I'm a very, very person that is actually, I love my children. I love them to be around myself, but I can't change them to me. They have to explore life. But as they explore life, they want to explore life in a way whereby the life accept them, and any other person that sees or hear what must actually say embrace, because this is a human being. Now we're having a liberation in South Africa whereby criminals are given they are actually given the free way. They can do as they please, because our courts will actually you need to prove to the court why you were walking on the street and who is actually supposed to be walking on the street. So the criminal is actually given the freeway to walk there. And then he can do as he please, because it's, in fact, our courts are saying to them, it's your territory. When it's dark, it's your territory. You can do anything. Yeah. Because the victim now must explain, I was actually on my way to my
David,
uncle's home or my aunt's home.
David, we're going to have to leave it there. I believe you've made the point around just the ways in which, as South Africans, we're all responding, right, to news of what has happened. And I can imagine just how worried you are with your daughter being in Bloemfontein. But I think there are many families in this country that are having those conversations with their children. Mothers and fathers and aunts and concerned uncles who are calling girl children in their families to say, no, just be extra careful. Do to show you how irrational part of it is that it again places the expectation of women on women to protect themselves, right? Because it says you must protect yourself as much as you can. Now, how can you protect yourself when there isn't really a space in this country where we can say for sure that women are safe? It's an unreasonable expectation to expect that women are going to be able to protect themselves from violence. It is the violent that must stop their violence. Zanele, you in KZN. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy. Hey, Cathy. Yet another family now is going through their daughters' belongings as we speak. They are collecting them. They are gathering those belongings. They are putting them on a suitcase. They are doing all sorts of things that we are doing after the funeral. And it's sad and it's painful. It's painful, Cathy. And I can imagine, Cathy, when the friends describe of Colorado, Uguti, by the time she was preparing herself to go to this date, so-called date, and I can imagine Cathy putting herself on a perfume, an expensive perfume, the clothes, and by the time she is looking at herself at the mirror. Cathy, as women, we are not safe, especially young women, even us, middle age, even the old age. We are not safe. When South Africa was cleared on being a white genocide last week, I told myself that no, women, we should rise up and say there's a women genocide. There is a women genocide. I don't know who can deny that. If Donald Trump now can say, okay, women, I'm giving the women in South Africa, the refugee in here in America, I can go there, I can go there, because we are not safe at all. Thank you, Cathy.
Zanele, sure, yeah. Thanks for putting it in the way that you have, because it really does help us to reimagine how we characterize even the scale of violence that we see against women, because it is targeted. You do have targeted killings against women in this country, maybe not necessarily fulfilling the entire criteria of what a genocide is, but how you have put it certainly has me thinking. Let me go to, is it Lenient? You're in Siabuswa. Good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Good, Lenient, go for it.
Yes, I've got a problem. During COVID-19, the country was quiet and under control. But after COVID-19, the country is out of control. People carrying their gun and doing as they wish. Why the government is not making a special sentence for killers? Special sentence like fire nucleus. Fire nucleus, itayere, to get country under control.
No,
why?
Lenient, we can't be talking about the necklacing of people.
I can't hear you clearly.
Lenient, I'm saying that we can't be talking about or even advocating for the necklacing of people on a public platform.
But people are busy killing other people using their... Sorry?
It's in breach of the code of conduct that governs the work that we do.
Okay, I apologize. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Lenient. And it's not true per se to say that things were under control under COVID-19. If I can take you back, the statistics of violence against women during the pandemic, in fact, reached historical highs, because it was reported across the board that violence against women increased under the lockdown. It didn't go down. So yes, people were not in the street, so maybe there was a drop in petty crime or all other, maybe other markers of crime. But certainly violence against women was not one of those that had gone down. So this has been a perpetual problem of our society, that even the lockdown, while in fact I remember a lot of the research that came out after the pandemic was around how women were locked down with with their abusers. Young children, young girls locked down with their abusers. Because let's not forget that more often than not, women are killed and they're abused by those who are close to them, by people that they know, not always strangers in the way that we are seeing in Olerato's matter. Les, you're in Cape Town. Good morning.
Okay, let me go forward. What are the causes of crime or gender-based violence against women here in South Africa? As I can see here in South Africa, it's just because of the lawlessness of the ANC government. Whatever we can say that we are trying, we cannot try anything if the ANC is lawlessness. Where do we see that the ANC is lawlessness? Check from the ministers. The ministers are highly protected by many bodyguards. And they were voted by the people from the ground. And those people from the ground, they are not protected by the law because of lawlessness. To prove that this lawlessness is taking place in a MPS, this is where we see the corruption and the kind of diplomat in a sense of nepotism. In this case, we see many people here in South Africa who are watching in a space all what is happening in the government. Some of the men who are cowards because of trying to kill the women when the women are trying to empower themselves, so that the women of these days, they want to work for themselves, not to depend on men. And these things is like a challenge from the men, where the men think maybe they can take revenge or whatever. I don't see any reason why they kill the women. But in this case, and overall, if I can check, the ANC in the lawlessness, where they fail to be accountable in many cases where they're supposed to make service delivery, and when it comes to that point of law, when it comes to the police, whatever, the crime, to stop crime, we are seeing many things that is happening in a police station where the police are not taking seriously the case of rape, abuse, when the household going to the police station to open the case. And in this case, if I can check, before I can go more further, here in South Africa, the crime cases are more, murder are more. And the racism, we don't have case for racism. But most of the MPS there, they're going to talk about racism, something that doesn't exist, unlike to focus on what is happening on the ground. So we are not protected here in South Africa. And even the politics said, the first things for the government is security. Security is the first thing that's supposed to be done. That is why when here in South Africa, as a South Africa of diversity, we've got so many, I can say approximately more than 56 million in South Africa are blacks, are in control. If you can check, go back, if the government of 1994, or before 1994, the government of before 1994, they maintain law and order under apartheid. What is so difficult to make law and order in a democratic system? So in this time, I can see they are promoting hate nation. We have got a hate nation that is not, that make people of South Africa not to be united. We are not united here in South Africa because of what? People are trying to promote transformative policies that promote instability in South Africa and a divided nation. This is to make South Africa to be united. When are we going to have the slogan of South African come first as a unity?
Okay, Les, you've made your point. You've made your point. Les out in Cape Town.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know, though, how the promotion of transformative laws or policies then also encourages a culture of violence and division. I don't quite see that connection or the link between the two. Mpho, you're in Zanin. Good morning.
Thank you, Cathy. Good morning.
Yes, sir.
I have a case here. In fact, I feel like my health was compromised. I got injured on the 14th of May while doing my job. Like, I'm a self-employed, so I got a fracture on my left foot. So I went to CN Patudi. If you allow me to mention the name of the hospital. Hello,
yes, go ahead, Mpho.
I went to CN Patudi for treatment after I got injured, and then I was admitted, and everything was applied. And because of the nature of my injury, they couldn't help me to the fullest or go ahead with the operation. So I was later transferred to Litaba, the nearby hospital that has specialists. So when I got there, I was booked for an operation on the 26th of May. Then I was then discharged after 2 days of admission. Because I was told now I'm going to go ahead with the operation because of some, I don't know the technicalities, because I'm not a doctor. I don't understand what they're trying to explain to me. But instead, they applied the same methodology that they applied at the initial admission at CN Patudi. So now I'm stuck at home with a leg that I know that it possibly cannot heal because it needs an operation. Considering the way the X-rays loose on my X-rays here. So I'm pleading with you, Cathy, to help me with this problem because now I'm stuck and I don't know what to do.
What did they say to you when they were discharging you from the hospital, Mpho?
When they discharged me, they said they are no longer going to go ahead with the operation, but they are going to put me on something else. But I'm only concerned because the X-ray here tells something else, and I was firstly booked for the operation, but it was later cancelled by one doctor.
What reason did they give for cancelling the operation?
They said they're going to give me to put me on another program.
Okay.
They said it's I don't know, consecutive management or something. But according to how my X-ray looks here and practical common understanding because of what I see on my X-rays here, that it seems almost practically impossible for my bones to heal because they're not even aligned.
Okay. Mpho, what I'll have to do is put you back through to our producers. Obviously, not much I can say or do. I'm not a doctor and certainly haven't seen the information that you're talking about. So let's rather do that for now, and we'll see if there's anything that we can do on our part to help you follow up on the matter. John, you're in Cape Town. Good morning.
Good morning, lady.
Yes, sir.
I hope you're well. I'm not going to ask you how are you. I know you're well because every morning I heard the stories. Everybody's asking how are you, and then you said I'm good. Then go for it. Am I right? Yes.
And you've decided to do exactly that, John.
I think I must have populated into every guy. Listen, when you ever call Cathy, she's good. She's okay. Don't ask her how are you. You must just continue with the story you want to talk. Cathy, I want to let you know about this story of murdering people in South Africa. One question. Do you think the death penalty must come back? I think so. You take one's life, your life must be taken. That's my solution. There was a picture that goes around on WhatsApp a couple years back. That say that P.W. Botha said, give the country in the hands of the ANC. You will see confusion and anarchy. What is going on now in this country, lady? What is going on? Bring in the death penalty, that the death rate or the murdering rate must come down. People don't value another person's life. in this country.
John, when you look at how complex the issue of crime in our country is, do you think that there's a panacea, that there'll be one thing that we do that solves all of it? I don't think so. I think that bringing back the death penalty, number one, it's obviously against the Constitution, so we'd have to change the Constitution.
They changed the Constitution, lady.
But
changed the Constitution. Yes.
But the point that I'm making, John, is that the death penalty is also sort of, it's an after-the-fact solution. It's reactionary. It doesn't deal with the root of the problem that we're dealing with as a society. So it's not necessarily going to change the crime levels. It just changes what happens to those that are able to be processed by the criminal justice system successfully so. And we already know that that is where the bulk of the problem lies. So the difference is that instead of sitting in jail, they would, they would be killed. But it doesn't deal with the problem.
I do hear you, lady. I do hear you. But sitting in jail, eating the taxpayers' money, they're getting fat inside. Look at the case of look at the case of Saldanha Bay. That lady was thin before she was put to prison. When she came out of prison to sit here in front of a case, she was fat about of our tax money. You take one's life, your life must be taken, lady.
Okay, John,
I conclude with that. Thank you very much, lady. Have a nice day.
Cape Town. That's John's view there. Look, I don't necessarily think that the death penalty is the answer. And also, when you look at different research from across the world, there isn't necessarily a strong correlation between the death penalty and low crime rates. There's so much else that goes into it that if we look for what seems like an easy way out, we're going to stay with the same nature of problem that we're dealing with. Musima, you're calling us from Polokwane. Good morning.
Good morning, Sis Cathy.
Yes, morning, Musima. Go for it. Welcome to the show. I think you're a first-time caller, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
All right, welcome to the show. What do you want to talk about this morning?
Thank you. I recently completed my honors in psychology at UCT. I obtained my BA in 2023, funded by NSFAS. So last year, I applied for NRF and other bursaries because I believe that, having had passed my undergrad really well, that I got accepted into UCT that only takes 40 people. I just thought that I was going to get NRF, but I was told around April that I was unsuccessful due to budget constraints. So right now, I can't obtain my academic record because of outstanding fees. I opened a Beggar Buddy campaign so that I can raise funds to pay off the debt, even though UCT keeps adding interest every month, even though I was trying to pay when I had a job. So right now, I'm willing to ask if it's possible, because I'm dealing with just 4,000 people, each donate to rent towards my fees so that I can pay off UCT and my academic record.
Sure. And Musima, how much do you owe?
It's over 133,000.
133,000 rand that is outstanding.
Yes.
And your experience so far in terms of accessing the job market, what is it that people are telling you when you apply for jobs and you don't have that academic record?
Well, they need to see my marks and how well I passed, because if I have to apply for research assistant jobs, they will need to see how well I did with my research course.
And if I understand you correctly, you're saying NSFAS paid for which part of your studies?
My undergrad.
Your undergrad. And, in terms of your honors, you enrolled into your honors without funding.
Yes, because I thought I was going to get funding, because they do say that you have to obtain more than 60%. And if you were funded by NSFAS, they do say that you stand a chance of getting funding.
And what did they say to you in the end? Well, what reason did they give for not funding?
Well, if your status is on internal screening on the NRF portal, that means that your funding was unsuccessful. So when you try to email them, they tell you that it's because they do not have enough funding for everyone.
All right. Yeah, it's linked to the problem that we were discussing at the beginning of the school year. And, NASFA saying that they are no longer going to be funding postgrad students, or if they do that, it'll be at a very limited range. So, Musima, basically you want people to try and come out and support you as much as you can.
Yes, please.
Okay, what's the name of your campaign?
I can send the link.
Okay, all right. Send the link, and what we'll do is that we'll share it on our social media, and you might have some listeners that are listening that also want to get involved and see how best they can support you. I know it mustn't have been easy, Musima, for you to pick up the phone and call us this morning.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. All the best, hey?
Thank you so much.
Musima out in Polokwane, 133,000 Rand outstanding that she needs to pay balance of before she can access her academic record. Now, imagine how many people you need if each is donating 30 Rand to be able to get to that. It's just such, life is not easy for so many people, We're going to have to leave it on that note for the open line. It's time for your latest news update.
Top stories: Ramaphosa hails school jobs program, and Russia and Ukraine in Istanbul for fresh peace talks. A very good morning with the news. I'm Dino Mataung. President Cyril Ramaphosa says government basic education employment initiative demonstrates its determination to address the country's high youth unemployment. Under the initiative, about 200,000 people will start working at 200 schools countrywide. In his letter to the nation, Ramaphosa says the aim of the initiative is to develop skills such as time management, teamwork, and problem solving among young people. It is a flagship program for the presidential employment stimulus launched in 2020. Busi Bopela reports.
The Basic Education Employment Initiative, which resumes after a year's pause, according to the President, brings hope, energy and incomes to areas where opportunities are often out of reach. According to their various skills levels, participants work as curriculum assistants, supporting maths, science and technology, act as care and support assistants, identifying at-risk children, or tackle essential maintenance work. These roles are aimed at supporting the education system and providing real work experience to young people to transition into the labor market. Busi Bopela, SABC News.
The Senzo Mayua murder trial is expected to resume this morning in the High Court in Pretoria after the state requested for more time to furnish the defense with vehicle tracking data. This pertains to vehicles officers used when they arrested some of the accused. 5 men are on trial for the murder of the Bafana captain in October 2014. Paul Magubane reports.
The requested vehicle tracking data from Defence Counsel Charles Mnisi pertain to vehicles involved when accused number 1 Muzi Sibiya was arrested on the 30th of May 2020. The information is central to the defense of Sibiya, who alleges he was taken from Tembisa to a different location where he was allegedly assaulted. State Prosecutor George Baloyi last week told the court that he was still in the process of gathering that information. Meanwhile, Defense Counsel Sipura Mosipili has also requested data on the vehicles that transported accused number 2 Bongani Ntanzi following his June 2020 arrest.
In other news, Environment Minister Dion George says that his department has introduced new technology, including drones, to protect rhino in the country. He says as the country is on the front line of rhino conservation, South Africa is committed to building strong enforcement networks across borders. George was speaking after a SAIS task force meeting in Pretoria.
On the drone technology, for example, remember South Africa as the president of the G20 this year, one of our key priorities is to focus on artificial intelligence and leveraging off that. So we have got several programs where we are looking at placing drones, we already have a number of them, into the park so that we can see where the poachers are. This is early days, of course, and these are a number of initiatives with a number of organizations, but that is making a very big difference.
We move to the Free State now, where traffic authorities say the N3 toll route has been closed in both directions due to a protest. They say trucks have obstructed the flow of traffic in both directions near the roadside Raids intersection. N3 Toll Concession Chief Operations Manager Tanya Dugra.
The N3 toll route is currently closed in both directions near the roadside Rates interchange in the Free State. This is due to trucks obstructing the flow of traffic, possibly due to orchestrated action. Road users are advised to approach the area with caution and to delay travel to the area if at all possible. Law enforcement officials and emergency services teams are all on scene.
Lastly, further afield, Russia's delegation has arrived in the Turkish city of Istanbul for a second round of peace talks with Ukraine. The first round of talks over a week ago resulted in the biggest prisoner exchange since the war began, but there's been no agreement on ending the fighting. The BBC's David Bamford.
Both sides confirmed the Istanbul talks were still going ahead despite Kiev's latest audacious attack on Russian air bases. The US Special Envoy at the talks, Keith Kellogg, said both sides will present documents outlining their ceasefire demands. Ukraine has published the document it will present, indicating it will not hand over territory or allow its military integrity to be weakened. Russia has not made public its proposals, but Vladimir Putin's positions have not changed, that Russia keeps all captured territory and Ukraine gets no defence commitment from NATO.
Recapping the top story, the SAWA President Cyril Ramaphosa says government basic education employment initiative demonstrates its determination to address the country's high youth unemployment. Headlines at 10:30 for SAFM News. I am Dino Motaung.
If we have rights, shouldn't we also have opinions? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
In a land scorched by the sun and shaped by time, life refuses to surrender. From the silent stalk of the Arabian leopard to the resilient march of the sand gazelle, witness nature's fiercest survivors. Arabian Inferno, a journey into one of Earth's most extreme habitats where every day is a battle for survival. This is the wild. This is Arabian Inferno. Sundays at 6 p.m. on S3. Open up.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
EFC is live this Thursday. The indestructible champion Zakir Badat descends from the Wild Mountains to defend his welterweight title against Nigeria's electrifying kickboxing champion Segun Ogunaike. Plus, Timnan Lawuli takes on Sibusiso Suvendila, and undefeated Kevin Pretorius steps up to challenge Oswaldo Benedito. EFC 124 live from the World Sports Betting Arena. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
You're listening to The Talking Point. Welcome to the second hour of the show on this Monday morning. It's 9 after 10 o'clock as we lead conversations that move us. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be looking at the intersection of politics, nepotism, and asking the question really around how we look at and how we determine the role that political connections play sometimes in the opportunities that one is able to access. And it's off the back of Mineral Resources Minister Gwede Mantashe describing how the children of political figures in this country are treated worse than illegal immigrants. He says that they are unable to get jobs, unable to access opportunities, because when they do, it is automatically ascribed to their political affiliations or the fact that they have politically linked parents or high-profile parents. And so the space for them to work and make meaningful lives becomes quite small. And so, of course, we're also dealing with a very big problem of nepotism in this country, where people have had to sit and watch the progress of the so-called elites take place, whereas their own lives seem to be stagnant, if not regressing. So we'll take a look at that particular conversation within this hour. Before we get to it, though, lots of your WhatsApp voice notes on different issues from the open line. Let's start off with that.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Morning, Sis Cathy. I am just concerned that this killing of the student at the Nelson Mandela University didn't get the publicity it deserves, as to shake the authorities or the South African police services or the security in this country, to alert them of the danger that the students find themselves in, so that it can get the attention it needs or it deserves, so that less student, or so that no more student would be killed within the corridors of the university.
Good morning, Sis Cathy. Sis Cathy, I was reading an article on News 24 from Carol Patton asking Mr. President, Mr. President, where is the strategy to fight crime in South Africa after meeting Donald Trump in the White House? Thanks from Andil in Willowville, Eastern Cape.
Morning, Cathy. I stand with the guy talking about the level of the quality of the policing. In 2002, Cathy, most of the ladies who went to Pretoria College through Pretoria Central, they slept with a gentleman who made them pay bribes, around 3,000, 5,000. I alerted the management, they did nothing. And even the national commissioner knew about this thing. And later I did some digging. I found out that the senior managers, that recruitment, they employed their children and relatives and so on and so on. You know, Cathy, I was young, a junior. I was insulted by management. At one stage, they suspended me. For 8 months, I was sitting at home, earning a salary free of charge. Thank you very much.
Morning, Cathy. Nigel in Devon. Statistics show in various countries that execution of a murderer doesn't reduce the crime, the incidence of murder. And another thing about death penalty is that there is no logic in punishing a person for killing somebody else by killing him or her, even if that killing is legally sanctioned. The point is that killing is wrong, thou shalt not kill, and it's wrong whether the state commits it or whether an individual commits it as a crime.
Hi, Cathy. This is my corners from Johannesburg regarding the death penalty. I think it is not much about deterrent. It is more about disrupting networks, disrupting the syndicate networks, because if you're having the kingpins being arrested and being sentenced to death, and having a lot of people actually that are in these networks being put through to death sentence, you will start to see the difference. And I think it is something that we need to consider as a country, and I think that it is something that's very important to look at if we are to deal with the crime. Thank you, Cathy. Wonderful show.
What if you open your night to culture? Try new things and make space for new voices, new stories, and new perspectives. Open up your Saturday night with world-class entertainment, reality TV, and drama from 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Night Talk with Oliver Dixon.
When leaders need to account, we call on them. When society needs to debate, reflect, and advance, we're here to have the conversation. Join me, Oliver Dixon, on Night Talk every Monday to Thursday from 10 to 12 midnight.
Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
Well, let's get straight into our conversation for this hour. The Mineral Resources Minister, Gwede Mantashe, saying it's unfortunate that children of political figures in this country are treated worse than illegal immigrants. Mantashe was reacting to the backlash around the appointment of his son and other high-ranking ANC members to the Sector Education and Training Authority boards. The Higher Education and Training Minister, Nobuhle Ngabane, has since withdrawn those appointments after they were leaked to the media. A new process is now set to be followed. Let's listen to what Minister Mantashe had to say.
Buyambo is having 2 master's degrees and many other qualifications. And the young chap was making a big noise. They said, drop out of the UCT. I take an exception on that. And the second thing is that children born by political activists must never be treated as foreign nationals in their country. They must add value, they must contribute, and when we give birth to them and we send them to school, we are preparing them for contribution in society.
All right, and referencing there Buyambo, who is his son and who has 2 master's degree, a doctorate, and was very much, at least of the qualifications he had, seen as somebody who should have qualified to be on that board. Well, we're going to now unpack the controversy around this and look at what Minister Mantashe is saying. Is he correct that society in some instances is unfairly judging the children of those who are politically connected or who have high-profile parents, closing them off to opportunity because it is going to be deduced to be nepotism? Kashif Wicom is the president of the Progressive Professionals Forum. Kashif, good morning to you.
Good morning, Cathy, and thank you for the opportunity.
Dr. Ibrahim Harvey is a political writer, analyst, and author. Dr. Harvey, good morning.
Good morning, man. Can I please ask you, if you can't, I'm in Cape Town at a restaurant, there's a bit of noise, if you could just raise and ask the others to just speak a bit louder.
Okay, we'll see.
Sorry,
we'll see what we can do.
Okay.
Yeah, in the end, you might have to be the one that tries to find
Yeah,
the
let's
quietest
see,
spot.
let's see.
No,
Okay.
no problem, Ibrahim. And Cynthia Skuman is managing director of Ethics Monitoring and Management Services Proprietary Limited. Cynthia, good morning to you.
Good morning, Cathy, and morning to your listeners.
In fact, Cynthia, let me then start off with you, because it does seem to be an ethical and moral issue that is being presented before us here.
Yes.
And I guess perhaps to to lay a foundation for the conversation, the best place to start is saying, what are the lines potentially that could be crossed when we look at individuals who can't help where they come from? They belong to these politically connected or even high-profile families. They can't help who they are, Cynthia. But when it comes then to being able to participate economically, what are those lines that create the ethical and the moral questions, to the extent that this is something that the country is talking about today?
I think the key issue here, and of course it speaks to what nepotism is, and let's be clear, political nepotism is the problem we're looking at here. I think what it speaks to is that nepotism by definition looks at an appointment of a family member or associated member of one circle where the person does not have the requisite skills, experience, qualifications. Now, in theory, of course, politically connected, children of politically connected people can fulfill meaningful roles and as the clip said, make a contribution. But the challenge is twofold. One is that because there have been so many of these absolutely inappropriate appointments, there is this absolutely overriding perception that it is not legitimate and not credible. And so on the other hand, at the least, the person being appointed would patently need to have the requisite skills, qualification, experience. And so, in this case, with great respect, I am not connecting the dots between chairperson of Mercita, manufacturing and engineering, with some agricultural economic qualifications, and no experience in chairing an organization of that magnitude. So, as I say, of course it can be valid, but then at the least, those qualifications and experience would need to be patently obvious.
Kashif, let me come to you and perhaps also give you the opportunity to reflect on what some of those fault lines might be, to make it very clear for us when we are assessing these situations. Because if we're to stay with the example of Minister Mantashe's son, Buyambo, he of course feels very prejudiced by this decision that has been taken. Amongst the qualifications he holds is a BSc in Agricultural Economics, a Master's of Science in Agricultural Economics from the China Agricultural University, an MBA from the Gordon Institute of Business Science. This is among a list of other certificates that he holds.
No, thank you. Look, I think one can speak about principles and values in a vacuum, but you must also speak about principles and values in the context that we are talking about today. Now, we cannot ignore that our country has shy of 45% unemployment rate. We cannot ignore that 31 years into democracy, issues of nepotism and corruption have reared its head more often than what we want it to do so. So obviously, the country is on high alert when it comes to these appointments. We also cannot ignore that if you look at the latest Labour, the Department of Labour's latest 2024 Employment Equity Report, 61% of senior executives are still percentage in the hands of our fellow white patriots, 18% African, 11.9% Indian, and 6.2% coloured, and then 2.8% foreign nationals. So within that context, one can expect that people will be on high alert. And within that context, you can't just brush aside the dreams, aspirations, and observations of those who were not successful. Now, having said that, and I want to take it out of the realm of Minister Gwede Mantashe's son, we need to ask, when these appointments are taking place or have taken place, is the person who was appointed, forget nepotism, are they the most qualified to fulfill or fill that position? Or are there others who are more qualified than the incumbent? And if you answer that question and the answer is they are not the most qualified, then you say, okay, now how did they get there? Was it because of nepotism? Was it because of incorrect employment equity criteria, etc., etc., etc.? So I think, Cathy, that must be the conversation. I can say to you, as the Progressive Professionals Forum, we're made up of a big bunch of deeply patriotic South Africans and South African professionals. But we also believe that those who are as qualified, more qualified than the people who have been appointed, they feel done in. And there's a sense that if I'm not politically connected, if I don't have political credentials, then I might as well not allow myself to be nominated. And that is the issue that we must discuss, that level of despondency that exists amongst patriotic professionals in South Africa when it comes to people such as this, and the optics which it creates.
Yeah, I guess the despondency, but also I imagine a great deal of discouragement, right, that these professionals face, especially if they feel that even if they put their hand up, they simply don't stand a chance because they don't know the relevant people in inverted commas. Ibrahim, this is a problem of what? A problem of our politics, a problem of our society. How did we end up here? And I like what Kashif has said, which is to not necessarily make it about Mr. Mantashe's son, because it also involved other high-profile ANC members and associates that many felt were simply not the right people for these jobs.
Hi, Cathy. Yes. I've listened to the previous two speakers, and there are important elements that they mentioned at first. But, for me, I'm sitting here, I'll tell you what this matter has been overshadowed by. Legitimately. It's all been overshadowed by 30 years of corruption, nepotism, lots of stuff in the ANC, in every department. That is the biggest problem here, and that's what we need to go beyond. We have to go beyond what is happening. And the CPAs themselves have been rampant with corruption, allegations of corruption and incompetence, and lots of shenanigans going on there for many years. But I know Mantashe very well himself, Ramaphosa, all the minister of Enoch, all of them. But I'll tell you something, there's something that stands out for me. If in terms of objectively verifiable criteria, that is it. I don't have access to all the applications and the qualifications and the suitability for office. But if, I don't know the details, if indeed Mantashe's son, measured up very well and possessed all the requisite qualifications and adequately met the criteria, then, and indeed you would think that the people in charge, knew what the requirements were, and also were mindful of the many allegations, of the CPAs and what has happened at the ANC in office, that they would have taken care and that indeed due diligence would have been exercised. And I'll tell you, Mantashe's son has got a big thing to fight, and I would support that fight if he's agreed. And remember, you've got a big case here because the relevant minister okayed that appointment. And on what grounds was that appointment, satisfied and went ahead? If there's a problem, then it would say that the minister and whoever the DG did not apply their minds, properly, adequately to the criteria. If there is the supposition that there might be other people who are better qualified, and that is the emphasis at the end of this day, is whether, in fact, in terms of that objectively verifiable criteria, Mantashe's son, got the job and adequately met those criteria. That is for me. Otherwise, we cannot go with the approach that because it's Mantashe's son or any Blade Mantashe's son or whatever the case might be, that therefore you have a case of nepotism. Nepotism must not be loosely applied, even given the background of the relationship between corruption, nepotism, and all these things in the past, even in the CETAs, in the SOEs we see. And that's the thing, because this man would have a case to fight, to be honest with you, and I would support that case if indeed he's been singled out because he's Grady Matash's son. And I must confess, in public, I don't know the full details of the other applicants, and you would need that to properly and objectively assess the criteria upon which the selection took place and other candidates failed to make it. And, it's giving rise to, in fact, to be honest with you, just like the vet exercise we went through when people were exposed for the first time to the intricacies of how the budget is decided on. Likewise now, this thing could give rise healthily to any future appointments, and that therefore the ventilation in public of all this controversy is good in a way. We have to see how it's going to be resolved, and I suspect it's going to end up in court, really.
Yeah.
But it might be one of those cases where we're going to, with hindsight, draw a lot of lessons from. Just very briefly, Cathy, that's my initial input.
Okay. I'm going to ask all of you to please hang 10, stay on the line. We're going to continue the conversation shortly. And there's some interesting things that Ibrahim Harvey puts out there. And it says it's around the transparency of the process, because if we don't know who else was considered, we don't actually know if he was the most qualified person for the job. That's number one. But number two, it also speaks to how some of these processes can also be subjective. We see that in the private sector and we see it in the public sector as well. But how do we deal with that? We'll have part of that conversation shortly. It's time for your latest news headlines.
Thank you, Cathy. On the news headlines on SAFM, I am Ondalambana, and a very good morning. The Umkhonto weSizwe Party is demanding an inquiry into the awarding of a multi-billion rand energy tender to a company linked to former Eskom COO Jan Oberholzer. President Cyril Ramaphosa says Government Basic Education Employment Initiative demonstrates its determination to address the country's high youth unemployment. And Limpopo Economic Development, Environment and Tourism MEC Chitarege Matibe says the arrival of more tourists even during the winter season will create jobs in the province. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Taking a look at your markets this morning, the rand is currently trading at 17 rand 88 to the dollar, 24 rand 21 to the pound, and 20 rand 43 to the euro. Markets in Asia were weaker at the closing bell. The JSE is mixed in mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe are red across the board. Gold is trading at $3,354, platinum at $1,053 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $64.21 a barrel.
We all have an enemy.
Not me.
Oh, please. Trust me, you do. Some are vocal about it. I mean, they don't shy away from it. Open hatred. Well, at least they're honest about it. Then you get our Satan. Oh, they will hate you in the shadows. Consult the Magoya of Baloi. Maybe an Nkabi for you here and there. Trash your name until it can't even be recycled. Tune into My Secret Enemy and get a front row seat to some of the most spine-chilling stories in the whole of betrayal. My Secret Enemy, Mondays at 6 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Let's then talk about some of the issues that you had raised anyway with whoever attended that Scopa hearing on behalf of the Road Accident Fund yesterday.
There were many things. Let me just mention two because this is important. We had raised an issue about the fact that none of the executives at the Road Accident Fund have been vetted. You will recall that many years ago, Cabinet took a decision that all government officials and heads of agencies and senior executives must be vetted to see whether they're fit and proper. At the Road Accident Fund, this had not happened in October last year, even though the chief executive misled us and told us that he had been vetted. It turns out this was actually not true.
Songezo Zibi, the SCOPA chairperson.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue the conversation on The Talking Point. We're looking at political nepotism and the backlash that we saw, of course, to the appointments of the CETA boards, among those being not only high-profile ANC members or individuals, but also the son of Minister Gwede Mantashe, and questions have been raised about those appointments. This weekend, Minister Mantashe saying that children of political figures are treated worse than illegal immigrants in the country, and we're reflecting then on this entire process. Is he right to make that kind of statement, that in this instance his son has been unfairly targeted because there are qualifications he holds which would have made him suitable for the job in which he had been appointed? Joining us this morning, Kashif Wickham, President of the Progressive Professionals Forum, Dr. Ibrahim Harvey, a political writer, analyst and author, and Cynthia Skuman, Managing Director of Ethics Monitoring and Management Services Proprietary Limited. Cynthia, I want to raise this issue of the process itself of selecting individuals for boards. Often it is quite a closed process. It's not very transparent. We see this in the private sector and also sometimes in the public sector. And it's also one of those processes that seems to be quite subjective, that in the end, it's not always the most qualified person who will get to sit on a particular board, but that it depends on your relationships with the people in the company, who has lobbied you, who is sponsoring you for a particular position. All of those things, they count, and yet we are talking about a process that also needs to be formalized in some way. So how do we grapple with everything that we know, Cynthia, happens on a day-to-day in some of these processes, and then apply it to what we're seeing with the CETAs and the public sector in this instance, and begin to say, where can things be done better?
Cathy, I hear what you're saying, but let me differ somewhat and say I don't think this should be in any way a subjective process. You know, the responsibility, especially in this case of the role, this is the chairperson of the manufacturing and engineering CETA. You know, they've got 6 chambers. It's an extraordinarily large CETA. And, of course, we all understand the purpose of the CETA, which is a hugely important purpose in our country. And let's be clear, we also understand the money these CETAs are sitting on. So the responsibility of giving effect to this ethically and effectively is, of course, enormous. Adding to that the point that the panel member made about unemployment and the history of corruption, the need for this to be ultra transparent and absolutely objective is a non-negotiable. And moving forward on anything less than that, I feel like saying asking for trouble in a simple term. And let's be clear, this is a public appointment. There is no reason why there shouldn't be perfectly clear criterion in terms of this. And then when someone is appointed, I'm not saying you have to issue a 10-page essay on it, but I do think that the position and the appointment should be clearly defensible. You should be able to say, we appointed Joe because of X, Y, Z. And yet, as you would know, of course, the minister, in response to a question, the Minister of Higher Education, in response to a question of what was credible about this appointment, her reply was, go and Google. I used the Google definition of credible. That's hardly instilling confidence in the transparency and objectivity of the process.
Of course,
and if it was defensible,
yeah.
I question your comments around the son's qualifications because on his own Agri-Group website, this is not apparent.
If we are to lift it, Cynthia, out of just the realm of of Puyambo, who is the minister's son in this instance, and
yes.
apply it to the other high-ranking ANC members, and look at what happens more generally in the state, it brings us back to that question of deployments, and cadre deployment in particular. And it says, is there a way of formalizing some of those processes that are not always within the ambit of the organizations? Because by the time that the list of names ends up with anybody doing their appointments, that has been vetted and approved elsewhere, as the Zondo Commission of Inquiry exposed or made clear for all of us to see.
Yeah, but the crucial question, and it's the sort of thing that would pop up for the public instantly, is against what factors was it vetted? And again, I come back to these appointments, the responsibility, the need to really contribute as effectively as possible to our country is not in question. So was it vetted against factors such as qualification and experience that can objectively indicate that the person is capable of really fulfilling that role to the extent that it needs to deliver a service to the country. And again, I'm not saying that there aren't circumstances where absolutely a politically connected child should get that role. But then, as I say, it needs to be so clear that we as the public can look at it and say, for goodness sake, this person's held the position of chair here, there, done this, and where it would really be clear. But I think it's not simply doubting the process based on the history of corruption. It's also looking at it and saying that this is not intended to be subjective. There should be rational, independent criterion. And you mentioned not as qualified and relationships in the company. By the time we're into lobbying for positions, we're into, in the politest version, we're into a very gray area. And again, ignoring the sensitivities in the country around this is naive in the extreme. And one would think that people in position of power would really aim to make their decisions as clearly and in a way that it would really be accepted because it was made soundly, i.e. on an ethical basis. And I think all too often we're not seeing that. So cadre deployment, I know it's being, criticized enormously. Actually, most governments employ their own people. That is not particular to our country. The question is that when we're in a situation of need, such as our country is, and we don't employ really capable people who can make a great difference, then we are really doing a disservice to the country, not merely falling into the trap of negative cadre deployment.
Okay.
Cathy, I must come in here.
Yeah.
I mean, this issue is a lot bigger than Minister Gwede Mantashe's son or any other public official's son or daughter. This issue goes down to service delivery within all tiers of government and within our SOEs. And again, to go back to my first point, is the person who was appointed firstly the most and best qualified amongst those who have applied. Then to establish if that person is the most qualified, there is, unfortunately, for our elected public officers, a higher ethical standard by which we judge them. And so if that person is, and if you look at the Financial Intelligence Center Act, FICA, if that person is a politically exposed person or a prominent, influential person, then that must be flagged. And then we must then say, okay, now this person is a PIP, he is a PEI, how do we deal with it? And then balance that, of course, with our Constitution and our Bill of Rights, which gives every citizen the same rights, irrespective of who their mother or father is. So there's a balancing act, Cathy, that we must maintain. And again, and I think all the speakers have said it, in a moment in history where all eyes are on government based on corruption and nepotism, which, let me call it alleged, which has been alleged over the last 3 decades or so. And how does our government deal with that? Now, already, the electorate were very decisive with our previous elections. We got a government of national unity, and many people did not vote for the then ruling party, who has now become part of the GNU, because of these allegations or issues, observations of corruption and nepotism. So how do we deal with that? So we cannot say that a son or daughter of a politician is now more prejudiced than everybody else when 44% of the population is prejudiced, because 44% of the EAP, the economically active population, is unemployed. So you can't ignore the feelings of somebody who believes he is as qualified as that person, but who is not politically connected. And again, going beyond the sons and daughters, people who were previous members of parliament, ex-cabinet ministers who now get resurrected into positions on these various board positions. I can say, for example, Cathy, within the Progressive Professionals Forum, there's a colleague of ours, a colleague of mine, who's got a double PhD. He's got a PhD in town planning, the first African black person to do so. And that person should be in a key position, both in the public and private sector, but that's not the case. So if a person such as that or any other person feels disgruntled and questions the appointment, we must allow those questions to come forth. We mustn't respond to it, and I say we, the state, mustn't respond to it emotionally, but must respond to it with facts, which goes back to the issue of transparency. If these appointments go through a transparent process, like we do with procurement of goods and services, and we can say, here's the scorecard using procurement of goods and services. That was the price. Those are the technical criteria. The person or the company who did not make it was third highest and therefore didn't qualify and technically didn't meet the criteria. Then we know.
Okay.
So when it comes to these appointments, the transparency thereof is key. And when a South African citizen or advocacy group asks for it to be transparent, we must just be the state must just be transparent about it and not become defensive about it. And that in itself, I think, could be a message as a patriotic South African that we would give as a Progressive Professionals Forum to those in government.
Let me go to our call line. Some of our listeners want to contribute to this conversation. Mashudu, you're in Makado. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Cathy, and your guest. I think for me, there's just two things. I think one, the politicians' kids. I mean, if you work in the private sector or any other company, there's a clause that your family-related members should not be, whether it's a competition, should not, they need to disclose. By virtue of being a minister, his family have proximity to all these things and have the networks already established. Then I think some sort of guidelines on how, not to say you exclude them, but to say if you are in this department, you will not be able to, like if your father is a politician or your mother, then you should not be in any national government role. Then the second one, I think, I don't know about the qualifications, but I tend to think that most people, I think our society now has become so much they've become so much entrenched into the qualification, meaning your academics, your degrees. In my view, you need a degree to enter into a position. Your experience counts more. I mean, anybody who has worked, whether in private or not, you realize that after you graduate, you go into the field. That's where much more experience you get, and much more, you get more meaningful thing. Your qualification is a base, where you build on your experience. That I don't know how old the young chap is, or however young it is, to go into a board, and carry it, on top of it. At least if you remember, I doubt that he has that much experience to be. I mean, I haven't seen it, but even his father is not talking about. He has been in the mining industry. He has worked as a senior person there. He has worked at this and this. He's talking about the academics. Those are just, they help you, yes, but you need much more than that to be able to make a meaningful contribution. Because if you are dealing with an industry, I mean, you can't come with a qualification and run an industry.
I hear you, Mashudu. It's a very valid point to make. I guess especially sitting as a chair of a board at that level. We're going to take a quick break. I'm back with more of your calls. Nhlanhla, Michaels, Butana, I see you all.
We love rating things, our phones, our cars, but our health? Your health lets you do what you love with the people you love. So who are you staying healthy for, and how can you improve your health? Choose Dis-Chem Life, the life cover that helps you live a healthier, more rewarding, longer life with regular health checks. Visit dischemlife.co.za now. Dis-Chem Life. Choose a better partner for life. Dis-Chem Life is an authorized FSP 50594, underwritten by Guard Risk Life, a licensed life insurer, FSP 76. T's and C's apply.
EFC is live this Thursday. The indestructible champion Zakir Badat descends from the Wild Mountains to defend his welterweight title against Nigeria's electrifying kickboxing champion Segun Ogunaike. Plus, Timnan Lawuli takes on Sibusiso Suvendila, and undefeated Kevin Pretorius steps up to challenge Oswaldo Benedito. EFC 124 live from the World Sports Betting Arena. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
Can one word unlock eternal glory? Okay, maybe just a shiny trophy and bragging rights. It's Password US, hosted by the king of chaos himself, Jimmy Fallon. Celebrities try to guess words. Hilarity ensues. Logic? Optional. Laughter guaranteed. Password US, where saying the right word might win the game, but saying the wrong one is way more fun. Password US, Saturdays 7:30 on S3. Say it like you mean it, or don't. We're not judging.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
All right, we continue the conversation on the talking point. Let me try and see if I can get through as many of our listeners as possible. Butana, good morning to you.
Good morning, my sister. Good morning to your panel.
Yes, sir.
You know, these speakers have been a feeding trough for ANC comrades, and they collapse them. Some of them are dysfunctional. By the way, the ANC people think that they are entitled to get this position. By the way, even Guatemala, remember, he was entitled to benefit from Pusasa. I mean, if they are so good, why can't they run this thing properly? The water boards have collapsed. Municipalities have collapsed. Everything they touch is dysfunctional. Now they are claiming that their children, they are entitled as well. By the way, his children abandoned the project in Eastern Cape and walk away with money. So we must accept that nonsense. It's enough. We want competent people, and that panel, they have to be transparent. They must tell us who are sitting on those panels.
Okay.
We must know.
Okay, Butana, let's leave it there. Michaels, you're in Gqeberha. Good morning.
Morning, Katie. If we're going to use academic qualifications, we're going to run into problems. let's take, for example, Trevor Manuel, who was the finance minister. He had no financial qualifications or degrees. We can take Pravin Gordhan, who was Minister of Finance. He was a pharmacist, right? We can even take now Andre De Ruta. He was no engineer. So when we say we are going to use qualification, I think we are going to have an issue of being selective in our analysis. I'm not saying that. Look, it's clear that in any political party or system, there is some sort of patronage and network, and you can put this one there and put that one there. But you don't need academic qualifications to sit on a board. What is the criteria to sit on a board? You don't need to have a degree or PhD to sit on a board, or you don't need to be an engineer to sit on a company or a state-owned entity that runs to be an engineering company. So the point I'm trying to make is that what is the criteria to sit on a board? That I think we must look at that. If he's got a degree in agriculture and so on and so forth, it doesn't mean that you cannot sit on the board because you do not have those degrees. If you get what I'm trying to say.
I hear you loud and clear, Michaels, and part of what you're saying is also the reality of what we see playing out within both the public or private sectors. And it goes back to that question that I was asking, that there are certain cultures that exist that have allowed part of what we are seeing. But that, I think, seems to be the elephant in the room. Nhlanhla KZN, good morning.
Masita Cathy, good morning. Thank you for taking my call. Mantashe, karma, it's too hard, like you've been hit by Thor's hammer from Avengers. You see, for 10 years, they've been violating constitutional rights. Affirmative action, employment equity, because when ministers are elected into positions, they use nepotism. They don't follow the proper channels to elect proper, suitably qualified people. Then when the private sector follows suit from what they've been doing for 30 years, they are crying foul. That's what happens when you manipulate your own policies and think you are clever.
Okay.
Clever is for monkeys. Clever is for monkeys. That's wrong. We need intelligent people.
Nhlanhla, let's leave it there. Nhlanhla out in KZN. Ibrahim, let me give you a chance to come in, maybe reflect on some of what our listeners have had to say.
Cathy?
Yes.
Yes. No, the concluding thing that concerns me, I supported completely the one caller who was a bit unpacking the objectively verifiable criteria. It's a very important contribution, I think. But let me tell you what is the thing that has concerned me a lot is why was the appointment withdrawn? Was it withdrawn because of public pressure and outrage, or was it a combination of that, and that they found that indeed if it's subjected to critical scrutiny, the appointment, there would be holes, there would be shortcomings and limitations? That is a very key and critical question, and we don't know the answer yet to that. We will only hear later on why exactly was the appointment withdrawn. That, for me, is key and critical as to what's going to happen to this matter.
And it's such an important question, Ibrahim, because if it is not able to withstand the public or to withstand any kind of scrutiny, including in Parliament, then that also speaks to part of what we're discussing today. Kashif? Yep.
Yes, I want to come in with Butana was very emotional about his views. Again, a listening government cannot ignore a citizen who feels so strongly about this particular appointment. You can't make these decisions in a vacuum of the emotion that you heard through Butana. But to go to Michael, he mentioned former Minister Trevor Manuel and former Minister Pravin Gordhan, may soul rest in peace. Both exceptional appointments from the dawn of our democracy in 1994. And he then said that academic qualifications should not be a criteria or the only criteria. We differ a lot with that. 31 years into democracy, there is no need for why a minister or a DG that runs a particular department cannot have and should not have the qualification commensurate with the department or the ministry which is running, and or in the absence of qualification, real experience that you can measure, taste, and see. And then when you look at the board position, Cathy, boards are made up of various qualifications and expertise. So we may argue that the chairperson of a particular board doesn't necessarily have to be an engineer, but he's a CA or he's whatever else. But then around him, we must have the qualifications that will collectively be able to run that SOE or that CETA adequately. So we cannot say 31 years into democracy, qualifications are not important. One, because of service delivery, but two, again, Cathy, because of what is the message that you're sending to young matriculants who are saying, I want to become eventually the chairperson of let's say, Eskom or Transnet or the National Transmission Company. I see that I don't need to be an engineer to do that. All I must do is become a politician, retire at 35, 40, and then somebody else will appoint me as the chairperson. What is the message we're sending to young South Africans? What is the message we're sending to qualified South Africans in saying that you can study all you want, but if it is perceived that you are not politically connected, then you won't occupy the high posts or positions within the public sector. And that is also very, very key, Cathy.
All right. Unfortunately, we're completely out of time for this conversation. It's now 11 o'clock. Let me thank all of my guests for coming on and sharing their contributions.
Thank you, Cathy. Top stories at 11. MK Party questions preferred bidders linked to former Eskom COO, and Ramaphosa held school job program. For SAFM News, I'm Ondelambana, and a very good morning. The Umkhonto weSizwe Party is demanding an inquiry into the awarding of a multi-billion rand energy tender to a company linked to former Eskom COO Jan Oberholzer. On Friday, Electricity and Energy Minister Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa announced the appointment of 5 preferred bidders under the Battery Energy Storage Independent Power Producers Procurement Program. Out of the 5 available projects awarded to Mulilo Energy, which Oberholzer chairs, MK Party Member of Parliament Portfolio Committee on Electricity and Energy, Prince Adil Chabeleng, says they have written to the Minister to demand full disclosure within 7 days.
We're currently questioning the validity in terms of the selection of the company that was awarded this particular contract and as to what was the reasoning and the merits behind the award. Because there were about 26 other companies that had bidded for this particular contract. So the questions are pertaining to the issues around the selection and the merits around the selection, and the fact that there was no public transparency whatsoever in respect to the selection of the current awarded companies.
President Cyril Ramaphosa says Government Basic Education Employment Initiative demonstrates its determination to address the country's high youth unemployment. Under the initiative, about 200,000 people will start working at 200 schools countrywide. In his letter to the nation, Ramaphosa says the aim of the initiative is to develop skills such as the management, teamwork and problem solving among young people. It is a flagship program of the Presidential Employment Stimulus launched in 2020, Cathy Mohlahlana reports.
The Basic Education Employment Initiative, which resumes after a year's pause, according to the President, brings hope, energy and incomes to areas where opportunities are often out of reach. According to their various skills levels, participants work as curriculum assistants, supporting maths, science and technology, act as care and support assistants, identifying at-risk children, or tackle essential maintenance work. These roles are aimed at supporting the education system and providing real work experience to young people to transition into the labour market. Busi Bopela, SABC News.
Limpopo Economic Development, Environment and Tourism MEC Chitereke Madibe says the arrival of more tourists even during the winter season will create jobs in the province. Madibe was speaking at the launch of the winter tourism campaign at the Mopani Rest Camp in the northern side of the Kruger National Park. Over 8 million tourists visit the park annually. Madibe says they're using the favorable weather conditions to entice tourists.
Limpopo presents two summers. It's a hot summer and a warm summer and a cool summer. So everyone who wants to enjoy summer in winter had to come to Limpopo. So that is why we say Limpopo is indeed a very important destination during summertime. So you can see here in Kruger National Park is warm and hot during winter months. So we do this annually, that we have a winter campaign. We usually change it to different areas. So Limpopo is a destination of choice.
Some tourists travel from as far afield as Europe. Carolina Matukinia says the experience is exceptional.
I and my colleagues are very excited. You know, as we said before, it's our one of the dream and dreams come true. So we are very happy that we are here and we are exploring this beautiful Kruger National Park.
Traffic authorities say north and southbound traffic is now being diverted via the off-ramps at the roadside rights interchange. Tanya Dugra, Chief Operating Officer of N3TC, says traffic police are attending to the obstruction that trucks have caused on the section of the N3 toll route in the Free State. She says traffic is slowly starting to move past the scene. Dugra also says road users should expect congestion and delays to continue in the area. Recapping the top story, the Umkhonto Sizwe Party is demanding an inquiry into the awarding of a multi-billion rand energy tender to a company linked to former Eskom COO Jan Obahoza. For SAFM News, I am Lambana. News headlines at 11:30.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
The land is their legacy, but in season 3 of Yellowstone, that legacy is under fire. Kevin Costner returns as John Dutton, fighting to protect his ranch, his family, and everything that can't be bought. More enemies, deeper betrayal, and the battle for the West, it's only just begun. Yellowstone Season 3. This land was won with blood, and it'll take more to keep it. Saturdays at 9:30. Starts 24 May, only on S3. Open up.
The rivalry between continental reigning champions Banyana Banyana and the Copper Queens will reach its maximum heat as they intensify their WAFCON preparations. The clock is on a downhill towards their journey to Morocco. This is the international friendly. Catch the incredible clash between South Africa and Zambia on Tuesday, 3 June at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus, SABC2 and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday. Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Good morning, Cathy, and your listeners. Cathy, we mustn't allow people like Quentin Mantashe to make such biased decisions about nepotism. If he wants to influence nepotism, he must learn from Patrice Motsepe. He must learn from the Motaung's family. He must learn from Johan Rupert and open his own companies and employ family. We will allow him, not on the government. There are a lot of graduates who are not employed because of such acts of nepotism. Brandma by Proteagland. Thanks for the great show, Cathy.
Morning, Cathy. What Mantashe said is truth, but then is their own making. The politicians are the cause of this. it's not only their children that receive this biased treatment. Even us, with no inheritance, no connection, no backup, we also get shoved aside for people with private connections. So it's not them alone. We are all suffering from this biased recruitment process. So they better feel what we're feeling. Thank you.
Good morning, Cathy. Fred the Tracker here in Gqeberha. Cathy, I'm a little bit down. My team lost yesterday, so yeah. Anyway, Cathy, here in PE, last week I was here. I was robbed there by a Paddy there. People jumped on my truck, stole some stuff. But here's the issue. Some of the police stations, like here in PE, there's a PSS department here for the rail, those guys for protection services. They've got one bike. That one bike has got an expired disc. They don't have a vehicle. Practically, they don't have a vehicle. In SWAT Corps, the bikies, they don't have tires.
Good morning, Cathy Lukman, Captain Cathy. Thank you so much for this former cop who, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. But it's reality. That is, it's not that surprising actually. But Cathy, you need to bring in a police minister here, everybody here, and we need to find out what the criteria is for police people to be admitted, and this test and all those things. We need an update here. Please get the police minister here immediately.
Good morning, Cathy.
Hi, Cathy. I can hear your show is so great. Yeah, like you talked with the point that has touched me, and it's been hitting me for so long, and I don't know how to get out of that. But I'm just gonna give a hint. I know there's the superiors. I mean, the police. It's not easy to tell the information because they sell you to those people. I mean, I've seen people doing stupid things like killing somebody in front of my eyes, and that has traumatized me even to date. But I can't tell anyone because I know the police are going to say my name, and I can be in a problem. Okay, so, Cathy, it's anonymous from Gobert.
Planet Earth, third planet from the sun. A cool place within the solar system where you can pause and take a deep breath without your lungs exploding. Home to an amazing array of wildlife and amazing landscapes that will leave you breathless either through wonder or fear. For humans, it's a place they call home, the only one that they have now. Team Surai follows a dedicated group of individuals dedicated to protecting the planet. Their mission, to encourage viewers to take concrete steps to protect the Earth. Catch Team Surai Thursdays at 6 p.m. S3, open up.
After a 1-0 draw in their opening match in last year's edition of the regional competition, Bafana and the Mambas meet again in this year's tournament opener. This is the Hollywood Bets Casafa Cup 2025. Catch the glittering action of Southern African football. South Africa versus Mozambique. This Wednesday, 4 June at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC+, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Oliver Dixon on SAFM.
So from a timing perspective, has the president instructed the minister over the last 2 weeks or so to complete drafting this policy directive and to gazette it as soon as possible?
To my knowledge, there hasn't been any pressure from the presidency in this regard, and I think that the communication from the office of the presidency to the media has been that Starlink wasn't specifically discussed, and so I can fully understand why the timing would look suspect.
That's Gwena Moloto, the spokesperson of the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, Solly Malat.
This week, today, Fridays, 6 to 7 p.m.
#SAFM Talking Point.
You're listening to The Talking Point as we continue to lead conversations that move us. Our final look for the day, or the conversation we're having for today, is a story that has to do with alcohol and its presence in public schools. In the Eastern Cape, The Department of Education there has banned all liquor sales on public school grounds and also asked 38 schools to not renew their permanent liquor licenses. According to the South Africans School Act, it prohibits the bringing, possession, consumption or sale of liquor on public school premises or during any public school activity. Now, some former Model C schools have shared their concerns around the impact that this is going to have on their fundraising initiatives, given that the government funding in the budgets of the schools has basically created gaps. There isn't enough money that's coming through for them to be able to foot their entire bill. They've also highlighted the caveat in the South African Schools Act on fundraising, and this is really something that has become a norm, for many former Model C schools. They'd run fundraising initiatives such as your gala dinners or etc., where alcohol is not being served to minors or to the learners, but it is being served to their parents or whichever stakeholders have been invited to these events at schools. Now, those that are activists and fighting for schools to become alcohol-free zones have supported this particular move by the Department of Education. Well, let's bring into this conversation Tembani Mkida, who is the Deputy Director General for Institution Operations and Management at the Eastern Cape Department of Education. Tembani, good morning to you.
Good morning, Cathy. I am Tembani Mkida. Thank you so much for having me in the interview. Thank you so much.
Kashifa Ansa is Campaign Manager at Rethink Your Drink. Kashifa, good morning.
Thank you very much for having me, Cathy. Good morning to you and your listeners.
Matakanye is the General Secretary of the National Association of Schools Governing Body. Matakanye, good morning to you.
Good morning, Cathy. Good morning, and the fellow participants over there, and as well as your listeners in the country.
This has been an ongoing debate. Should schools be completely alcohol-free zones? Tembani, you as the Eastern Cape Department of Education believe so. Tell us about what has informed this ban that you have now instituted around alcohol in your public schools.
No, thank you. Thank you so much, Cathy, once again to my fellow participants in the interview and the fellow listeners in the country. No, thank you so much for this discussion, Cathy. But we in the Eastern Cape have actually taken this initiative of writing a circular to all our schools, and this being informed by what we actually experience on the daily basis in terms of what is taking place in our school, where you experience complete moral decay, which is actually demonstrated by the behavior of our learners and in some cases of our teachers. Well, of course, this is not just taken from the air, but it's just implementation of law, because even in terms of Bella Act, Section 8, it really enforces that there should be a complete ban of use of any drug, including alcohol, in the school premises. This is all intended to protect the core business of an institution, of an educational institution, and that is teaching and learning. For us, what is important in our education institutions is ensuring that what is the business of a school should actually be protected at all costs, and that anything else that must actually take place in a school should actually be seen to the extent that it is promoting teaching and learning in our schools. So, Cathy, briefly, that is precisely what is informing the Department of Education to take this action. Thank you so much.
I want to just understand from you, Tembani, what is it that you were seeing in schools that has made you take this step?
No, thank you so much, Cathy. Well, of course, I live in the area of Buffalo City, in East London, as I'm in the Eastern Cape. Just in the recent past, what you would have experienced in the so-called the occasions, the reunion occasions that are taking place in some of our schools, where you would actually see learners, you would actually see our small towns being abuzz with children who are actually drunk in our streets because of these occasions that are taking place in our schools, which seem to be encouraging everyone to be involved in enjoying liquor in school and outside of the school premises, which really affects the performance of our schools. It really affects, it has an impact on the conduct of these very same learners. So what we are then saying as the department that let this not take place in school premises. Let it take place somewhere outside, and this is exactly what the law is saying. Because it really found a contradiction that during the course of the day, you say there must be a total ban on alcohol in school premises. But sometime later, you seem to be encouraging that someone else must be in a position of enjoying utilization of liquor in school premises. So briefly, Cathy, what we are actually doing here is that we are actually protecting our children from those behaviors.
Do you have reason to believe that in these instances, and I hear what you're saying around, the use of alcohol by minors and just how terrible that is for the communities and the schools that you have seen in your area. But do you have reason to believe that alcohol was being sold on the school premises? Do you have reason to believe that you have schools that were intentionally selling alcohol to learners?
No, it's not what we are saying.
Okay.
But we are saying that for whatever reason, to whoever the person might have been who would be allowed to enjoy use of liquor in school premises would have actually led to this temptation that learners themselves must be able to find ways during those occasions of finding liquor. Whether then they source this liquor directly from the school premises or not is what one cannot establish at this point in time. But the very act that school premises in front of the children, in front of the learners, has actually been used as places where liquor can openly be sold and be utilized is indeed, it has an influence on how children must actually behave in those premises.
All right. Okay. I hear what you're saying, Tembani. Kashifa, let me give you an opportunity to come in here. Of course, what the South African schools regulations allowed for before was that there could be some exceptions to the rule in as far as the granting of these liquor licenses are concerned. The department is saying that they don't want any more exceptions, that there must absolutely be no alcohol available on school premises. Your take?
Yes, absolutely. So as Rethink Your Drink, we're a campaign that really advocates against increased alcohol access, because increased access to alcohol is then related to increased alcohol harms, things like violence, things like health concerns for individuals. And communities end up bearing the cost of this, whether it be in healthcare or in increased policing needs in communities, etc. So the Eastern Cape Education Department here really taking a bold step with this comprehensive ban on alcohol sales and consumption on the school premises. For us, it's something that is really welcomed because we know that increased exposure to alcohol consumption, drinking around young people, increased advertising, etc., around young people, increases the likelihood that these young people themselves would, in adulthood, become dependent on alcohol. Research suggests that about 19.9%, about 1 in 5 young people, had their first drink before they were 13 years old. And so what we really are trying to do is ensure that we have enough or as many alcohol-free zones where children are present in order to ensure that consumption is not going to be in excess, not only for them in future, but also for the adults that are around them today. So really for us, we're really welcoming comprehensive bans like this, like the Eastern Cape Education Department has taken. And as you mentioned before, there are some exceptions in other provinces. Some provinces permit schools to apply for temporary event-based liquor licenses under stringent conditions. But we need to remain steadfast around the safety of our young people and the safety for communities at large, and help schools find alternative ways to fundraise that don't compromise the safety of children, that don't compromise the rights to safety that children have at school.
Matakanye, when one listens to some of the pushback to even a decision of this nature, as Kashif has touched on, it's often the fundraising question that is raised, and we know that school governing bodies would play a very important role in the accessing of these liquor licenses, because it would have to be through the consent of these SGBs that the school is able to approach the liquor board in whichever province to be able to get permission to actually operate. Now, to what extent do you feel that there is some acknowledgement of the principle that is being pursued here? That yes, when schools are selling alcohol, it could very much be in a controlled environment. It's not being sold in minors. But it seems to me that this issue is about the principle. Why do we have alcohol on school premises in the first place when we understand the depth of the challenge around alcohol abuse that our country is dealing with?
Thank you so much, Cathy, once again. We are fully behind the Eastern Cape Department of Education. We are fully behind the government of Eastern Cape to have banned liquor in schools. Now, I don't know who is behind this thing. I think people who are behind these things are the traders who want to make benefits out of our children. They know that liquor in this country contributes a lot of fatal death, a lot of ill-discipline, lot of disrespect. Look, in the road during the festive season, just look what liquor does there. Now, the question that we are asking, Cathy, is what message that very person who is behind the selling of liquor in our school, what message are you giving to the young minds? What message are you giving to the developing cognitive of our children? What message are you sending to all South Africans? What message are we sending to these children who are going to be the leaders tomorrow the question of rather you sell them or you don't sell them, but we just say the message that you are sending that it is free, it is okay to drink alcohol, whereas we know that alcohol creates problems in the country. And secondly, we as an education, we cannot be beaten by the liquor board. Liquor board said any liquor establishment must be 500 away from the school. So this person now is saying, no, you made a mistake, not 500 kilometers. Let them come inside the school. What thinking is that? You see? And we want to say, all the provinces in South Africa must follow the example of Eastern Cape. They must ban liquor in schools. And school governing body, we are calling upon you, all of you in the country. Don't ever allow liquor in your school. These guys who are interested in profit, they just want to destroy your children. They want to destroy the country. Don't allow them to do that. Refuse. Write policies that do not allow. We told them when we were formulating the South African school, we told them that we don't want to see liquor in school. And I'm happy that now Eastern Cape has already given an example of banning. And we want to call upon all the provinces to ban.
Okay, we're going to continue this conversation shortly. It's now 11:30. Here is a look at your latest headlines.
Thank you, Cathy. On the news headlines, the Western Cape High Court is set to hear an urgent court application brought by the EFF on the general fuel levy increase tomorrow. The Umkhonto Sizwe party is demanding an inquiry into the awarding of a multi-billion rand energy tender to a company linked to former Eskom COO Jan Oberholzer. And the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said that a major defence review being published today will move the UK's armed forces to war-fighting readiness. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
The land is their legacy, but in season 3 of Yellowstone, that legacy is under fire. Kevin Costner returns as John Dutton, fighting to protect his ranch, his family, and everything that can't be bought. More enemies, deeper betrayal, and the battle for the West, it's only just begun. Yellowstone Season 3. This land was won with blood, and it'll take more to keep it. Saturdays at 9:30. Starts 24 May, only on S3. Open up.
Cathy Mohlahlana on SAFM.
We continue the conversation on the talking point this morning. Our final conversation today looking at a decision by the Eastern Cape Education Department to ban the sale of alcohol in schools across the board, and citing some of the risks that are associated even with the presence of alcohol on school premises, and they want schools to be alcohol-free zones. Of course, this is very much in line with the Schools Act, including the Bella Act, but there have been exceptions where schools would be able to apply to liquor boards for special permission, and previously this has been granted. The department in the Eastern Cape is saying it will no longer be supporting any applications that are made. And of course, the exclusion then also extending to what Matakane was saying before we went to news, that there should be no alcohol sold within 500 meters of school premises. So, Matakane, before I continue with our other panelists, give us a sense of what is happening in other provinces when it comes to the sale of alcohol on school premises.
Well, we really don't know what is happening in other provinces. Hence, we call them to follow the example of Eastern Cape. If there is any province that allows their schools to sell alcohol in schools, because as I said earlier on, Cathy, is that we are fighting the messaging here. we don't want to listen to those tactics and say it is going to be sold to parents, it's going to be sold for what? What message? What message are we sending to the parents? What message are we sending to our children? When the liquor board itself says 500 meters away from the schools. 500. Now, this person who is influencing to make money out of our schools and children and parents and all those, he said, no. That 500 meters away from school. No, I'm bringing the liquor right inside the school. And that's why now there are 20 schools into taverns where you apply for a license to come and sell liquor in a school. We can't allow that kind of thing. But we are saying, as you asked that question, Cathy, if there is any province that does that, they must know that not in support of that, and not for the sake of our children, destroy the nation, destroy our children, because these children are the future country. When you have a president who is just, because he will learn drinking and you see drinking as anything wrong from the school. We can't. Where is the morality of this? We're talking of moral. South Africans, then the moral is very low. But when we are fighting the morality in this country, then you are allowing the liquor to be sold in schools. We can't allow that. Okay. And we don't know, Cathy, as we are out, I don't know any province that is selling liquor. With time, then, we will come back to this show and tell you this province is selling. And we are going to be on it.
Tambani, the Democratic Alliance in the province has tabled a motion at the provincial legislature, and this is for the MEC of Education to review this ban and to engage with stakeholders more directly, because you had 38 schools, at least as far as I understand, that had these licenses, that were granted these permanent licenses for the sale of alcohol. Are you going to be reviewing your decision at all? Does the case being made for why stakeholders need to be engaged directly, is that a compelling one?
No, thank you so much, Cathy, once again. Notwithstanding the important role of the provincial legislature in terms of formulating any pieces of legislation, but our stance as the Department of Education through the administrative processes, and also supported by Section 59A of the South African Schools Act, we have established a panel in the department wherein if any SGB amongst our schools have concerns that they want to raise with the policy positions that the department is actually taking from time to time, then that platform is meant for the department to engage. For instance, in this regard, we had already some sessions with some SGBs and their representatives that are raising concerns on this matter. So we have started to engage with them, trying to explain exactly what the motivation of this position of the department is. And I think that we are actually doing well in explaining the position of the department. But then the prerogative, of course, of the provincial legislature through its own internal processes, which are outside the control of the department, would, of course, be to engage with any political parties raising some issues through the acceptable the provincial legislature processes. So we shall await, of course, the outcome of that process, and we shall actually take it as it will be coming back to us as legislation of the department. And there's nothing that we can actually do with those processes. So we're also watching the space. Yes, thank you so much.
When it comes to the argument being made, in particular related to the fundraising and how this is going to impact their fundraising initiatives. What are some of the reasons that you have been given by the schools? And one just wonders also, how significant a contributor is it? So if you were to remove the alcohol out of the equation, does it mean that they can't hold fundraisers anymore? Does it mean parents and stakeholders only show up because there is alcohol?
No, Cathy, the opposite is in fact true. That here the issue is that people are dealing here with some attitudes which seem to give an impression that the only fundraising activity in a school is through sale of liquor. And we are saying there are so many activities that must take place, because we can never be against that schools must actually be supported to raise their funds. They may conduct cultural activities, music, festival, old age games, market shows. There's quite a lot. The only thing that we are saying is the department is that no alcohol in school premises. They are allowed to do anything else that is acceptable within the school, which is aimed at raising funds. For that matter, one would also just need to understand and really take an audit of the contribution of sale of liquor in school premises in monetary terms. That is an income generating activity compared to all the other activities that may actually take place, where I would even suspect, without any evidence, that the sale of liquor would not be contributing that much, except for the devastating effect that it has on our learners and the teaching and learning processes.
Kashifa, if I can come back to you and talk about, again, the alternatives, because it seems to me that you also have schools here that need ideas for how else they can raise money. And it also reflects back to society, right? Because the people that are attending these fundraisers are parents of children, and it's surprising that you have to convince the parents not to sell alcohol to them on school grounds. Kashifa?
It's an incredibly, one would think that it would be obvious that having alcohol at a school event, wouldn't be something that would be okay. But really, we need to start finding a collaborative problem solving. And I think schools, unfortunately, are, left in the position, as you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, that they will need to rely on fundraising to get, some of the operational needs met, because of funding gaps. And so we just need to find ways as communities at large, how we can find ways to support our schools in finding alternative fundraising models, Can we open opportunities for schools to apply for grants? What does corporate sponsorship look like for schools in order to meet their operational needs? Things like crowdfunding, etc. We need to help schools find alternative ways to raise funds that don't exclusively rely on alcohol sales. And I think, we can use really, really different ways, things like social media, community engagement, etc., to get people energized and excited about attending events that don't have alcohol. Alcohol has unfortunately become such a normalized thing in our events, whether it be parties, 21st birthdays, after tears, after funerals. It's just become something that we know to have at celebratory events, be them in our personal lives or in the public at festivals, etc. And so we really need to be encouraging schools to collaborate with their communities, to collaborate with governing bodies and with governments at large as well, to say how can we better support you in fundraising in a way that we can guarantee will not cause harm not only to children present, but to their extended families and then to the extended community and then to the country at large as well.
Sure. Let me go to Mthatha. Mr. Mohlahlana, good morning.
Good morning, Cathy.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Thank you very much for taking my call. In fact,
hello, Mr. Mohlahlana, are you still on the line? All right, it looks like we've just lost the connection to our phone lines there. Not sure what's happening, but while the technicians try and figure out what's happening with our phone lines, I'm so sorry about that. Let's take some of the voice notes you've sent through.
Dumela Cathy. Cathy, selling liquor on the school premises is like saying to your child it's cool to consume alcohol where you learn. Even those big wigs, maybe school governing body members who are members of the political parties, they do sometimes use schools as a venue for their gathering, for their meetings. They end up consuming alcohol in the school year. That's what I've seen recently in the vicinity, in the neighborhood. So it is utterly wrong to consume or to sell liquor on the school premises. It is utterly wrong. Schools are there for learning. There are places for learning. That's where our kids do prepare for the shining future. Good evening, lovely people. Housing from Rapisha.
Hi, Cathy, Daniel, Joshua, Chalon. As far as the topic is concerned, I believe all learning institutions should not have alcohol on the premises, and that should be a complete no-no, because you hear the saying, monkey see, monkey do. Doesn't matter, you restrict those youngsters, you don't serve them drinks, but the thing is, what they see is what they're going to go and do outside as well. So therefore, I believe if you're teaching the children, if you are allowing the liquor onto the premises, you're teaching your children of that school it is okay to partake of alcohol. And as we know, alcohol has caused a lot of chaos. In many families were broken through alcohol, mental sicknesses, accidents and deaths, and various things through alcohol. Therefore, I believe it should be a no-no. Thank you and God bless you.
All right, thank you for those contributions. And it seems that, a lot of our listeners then this morning agreeing with the position taken by the Department of Education in the Eastern Cape. That brings us to the end of this particular focus. Let me thank our guest, Tembani Mkida, who is the Deputy Director General for Institution Operations and Management at the Eastern Cape Department of Education, Kashifa Ansa, Campaign Manager at Rethink Your Drink, and Matakanye, who's the General Secretary of the National Association of Schools Governing Bodies. Thank you for coming in and weighing in on this issue. All right, that also then comes to where we wrap it up for the Monday edition of The Talking Point. We're back with you tomorrow between 9 and midday. Coming up next is the book reading, and of course you can stay tuned. Please do stay tuned to SAFM for all of your latest news and current affairs. We'll kick off the conversation again tomorrow on the National Roundtable at 9 o'clock. Do tune in for that and contribute to the national agenda. For now, it's time for the book reading, followed by the update at noon at midday.
You know, ever since I adopted positive energy-saving behaviors, the National Grid is thanking me. You should also adopt this lifestyle and your pocket will thank you too. Simply switch off non-essential appliances and lights when they're not in use. Reduce your geyser temperature to 60 degrees Celsius. Replace inefficient lights with LED lights. These are some of the ways you can use electricity wisely to help sustain our energy grid and contribute to a greener planet. Just like every rand counts, every kilowatt counts. Let's use electricity wisely. Eskom.
The Meeting Point with Koketso Sachane.
There's a number of other areas that you did touch on as part of your report back, Mayor, but your focus as well, together with your executive, is around the reclaiming of hijacked buildings in the city of Tshwane. How much of an issue is it?
It's bad, and the reason why it was important, we took advantage of the fact that we were seeing media anyway, so we invited them to come and see. So basically, again, this is negligence, where we've got assets of the city that no one is monitoring. to a point where we were, where there are shacks inside. The gentleman who says he's a caretaker, they says he's been staying there from 2014. We're not getting rental from that. We don't know who's occupying it.
It's one Executive Mayor, Dr. Cathy Mohlahlana.
The Meeting Point, Wednesdays and Thursdays.
Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
The book reading. Please note that the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised. SAFM presents another episode of the book Winning the Money Game, A Guide to Financial Well-Being by Mlamuli Mbambo, read by Samson Kumalo.
Well, Mzukulu, I'm glad you now see some of the tangible benefits of learning the money game and spending time watching shows about money. Compound interest is just one of the mechanisms that allow a person to reach financial well-being. I always advise on having more than one strategy or tool to reach a goal, so you might also want to learn how to make a bank want to loan you money for starting a business. Banks are chastised for not giving loans to people who want to start businesses. From the many proposals I have received over the years, few people show a good understanding of the financial aspect of their proposal. There are many reasons to start a business. Most proposals focus on the idea or the vision of the business and neglect the financial side of the business. Whether you are planning to sell oranges or start a new technology business, one of the key focus areas for a banker would be the numbers and the competence of the person or people who will steer the proposed business. These numbers tell the banker whether there is a likelihood of getting their money back or not. The person steering the business gives the banker either confidence or doubt in their ability to pay it back. Many investors and banks are happy to work with me. This is because they can tell that I understand money. When you go to the bank for a loan and you do not understand money, it is like asking to borrow one of my cars, yet you do not have a driver's license and do not know how to drive. I would be very reluctant to lend you my car in that scenario because there is a high risk of it not coming back or it coming back with dents. No matter how many laws you put on the road for drivers, if a person does not know how to drive properly, he or she will always not be safe or be a threat on the road. Would you say you would be a good driver on the road of money? I think I would be one of those who do not have a license and cannot drive. I've always thought the subject of money was to be left to financial experts and they would manage it for me. Most people hold the same view as yours, but I argue that it is like saying I will not learn how to drive a car because only experts or car mechanics should drive a car. I'm not saying every person should be a money expert, but there are some fundamentals that we all need to understand and adhere to if we want to attain financial well-being. When you understand the fundamentals, you will be able to have clarity in what you need, and this will make it easier for you to understand a new financial service or product that is introduced to you. If you know nothing about money, how would you know if you are talking to a great or bad financial advisor? Do you know your credit score? What is that? In the language of money, this is the equivalent of me asking you if you know what type of petrol your car uses. What happens when you put the wrong type of petrol in your car? Well, the car will break down because the wrong type of petrol damages the engine, I answered. That is similar to what happens with your finances when you have a bad credit score. It is like your academic report, but this report shows how you have been handling your money. How well have you paid back any money you borrowed or things you bought on credit? If you have paid these things back in full and on time, you get a distinction. But if you have missed some payments or paid late, your marks go down. I didn't know what it was, but I think I would have a great score since I have never taken any loans or bought anything on credit. It does not work like that. Your credit score is a number calculated using a formula that considers how you pay your bills, how much debt you carry, and how you compare to other borrowers. The more positive your information, the higher your credit score, and the better the deals you can get when applying for loans or credit. There are credit score companies out there that can help you. If you have never written a test before, it does not mean you are good at that subject. Similarly, just because you have never borrowed money, it does not mean that you'd pay it back well if you were to borrow it. I don't think that comparison is fair. I get that I would not get a good mark for a test I have not written, but in terms of this credit score scenario, I think the fact that I have never borrowed money should be a good thing. It should signal that I'm a responsible person and I live within my means. Your point has some merits, but it is just how it works, and you have to work within it because you are unlikely to change the credit score system. Abundance of money. A little rain each day will fill the rivers to overflowing. Monday proverb. Mkulu sat on his big leather chair in the lounge and had a puzzled look on his face. He asked me to decrease the volume of the television. I told him that I was not really watching anything, so I switched it off. He was silent for a while, and then he smiled. Mzugul, I'm not sure if I should lay the money challenge to you and then let you do your own research and study to find the answer that you hopefully will present to me in the future, or if I should give you more information. The issue is that I do not want to tell you everything because I also want to see your creativity and desire. On the other hand, I want to help you along that journey just as Lamini helped me. I wasn't sure what to say, so I remained silent. Let me tell you about some gems when it comes to growing money. The reason I'm going to tell you more is that there is a lot of misinformation out there about this crucial aspect of money. I will shed some light on this, but it is only a guide. And you will have to do further research and decide which money gems to investigate further and which to disregard. The interesting thing about growing your money is that once you realize how it is done, you will see that most of the options for doing it are readily available to you. It is as if the method of growing money is hiding in plain sight. Although the options are readily available, it does not mean it is easy or that it will happen overnight. I'm amazed at all these stories of overnight successes. Most of them, when you research further, you find that